I'm going to do a video here about fixing the brakes on my Roadster. This is a 32 Ford Roadster. I'm working on the brakes on it, and the brakes are juice brakes for early Ford. They're hydraulic, and the brake pads on it have been wearing low. I've felt it. It made a grinding noise this summer. I was kind of waiting until this winter to do it, so now is the time. One of the other things that we just had done is I had a local guy close to us here make a top for it. And this has been something, the old top that we had on it worked really, really well for what it was, but it was technically supposed to be a pattern. But he did side curtains for me on this as well, and it turned out real nice. But we'll get to the brakes here. So the first thing you want to do here is support the car with the jack, or raise the car with the jack, support the car with a jack stand so the wheel is up off the ground. And we're going to pull this wheel off of here, and then we're going to pull the drum. If you're running the wire spoke wheels on an early Ford, and you are trying to use the Ford brakes, that these started in 1939. They started using fluid brakes that year, from 39 up, and you want to run a spoke wheel with these drums, you have to run these spacer plates behind them. A lot of people don't do that, and what happens is the inside of the wheel gets crushed back against here because there's a lip that sticks out, and you have to get some of these spacer rings, and they just slide right over the studs there. But if you don't run these, that wheel can actually get smushed behind it, and the lug nuts will loosen up and you can lose a wheel. Not something you want to do and damage your vehicle with. So not all the early Ford brakes have a slip-off style drum like this. I modified mine to do that, so we're going to take a look here and check out the condition of these brake shoes. So what we're looking at on these brakes, we want to take a look at the thickness of the piece right here. And you can see that that piece right there still has some thickness to it. The one on the front is definitely much thinner. It's not in great shape. These aren't completely worn out yet, but they are fairly close. So while we've got it apart, I'm going to get those out of here, and we're going to put some new shoes on this. I'm also going to check the bearing here. I have been repacking these just about every year. I'm going to check, make sure there's no play in that. Spin it around. I may pull the dust cap off and take a look and see what the grease looks like in there, but I have been repacking these about every year or so, and I did it last year, so these are probably okay to go, but I'm gonna check it out anyway. The other thing you want to take a look at is the inside of the drum. You want to check that for any warpage or anything like that, and see that there's not any grooving in that. This actually feels pretty good. It's not 100%, but it's definitely still usable, so I'm going to keep with that. Now, there are special tools to take off the springs on these. I prefer to just use a pair of vice grips and muscle it off of there, but there are special tools for spring removal on these. I don't have the special tool, but I'm going to try to use this. Let's see if it'll come off. There we go. So these early brakes are very, very simple. There's not a lot to them. Basically, there's just a clip underneath there. These clips are hard to find. They may be reproducing them now, I'm not sure. But That clip holds the shoe back against the backing plate. There is only one spring on these, so they're not very complicated. Now, if you have self-energizing brakes off of like an F1 truck, the self-energizing brakes will have more springs in here. They'll have a lever down at the bottom. These are the early design. I chose not to run the self-energizing on them. I'd rather keep the brakes adjusted myself. These do take a little bit of adjustment to keep them going, because they don't self-adjust. Obviously, as the name says, they don't self-adjust, so you've got to keep after these and keep them adjusted properly as you go through your brake wear. So depending on what set of brakes you have, there may or may not be adjusters at the bottom. It might just be bolted in, or there may be an adjuster down at the bottom. This one actually has the adjustable pins down in there that go through the holes. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a round hole, and then this pin is actually offset. So as you turn the bolt behind it, it'll move this in or out, so you can adjust the bottom of your brake shoe in or out. And I'm going to make sure I've got the washers and all that for it. I think that washer's stuck underneath. Yeah, it is. So I'm going to take these apart. I'm going to clean all that stuff, and we'll put it back together to make sure that that goes back in. And these are free to move, because I am going to have to adjust these pins once we get it back together. And that's how simple it is to pull the shoes off of that. So I'm going to make sure that this ring comes out of here, and that one I might have to tap it out of there. I don't know if I can get it with the... There it came out. So I already have a pair of shoes to put on this that are new ones. They've actually been relined, but I have those ready to go on there. So we're going to make sure that we get the right shoe in the right place. Now, if you're doing this, the shoes on here, you have to double check, because there's a short side that doesn't have the lining that runs the whole length of it. And that short side should go on the back side of your backing plate. The long side that has lining the whole length of it should go on the front side of your backing plate, because most of your braking is done right up here. And that's why they do that. So here's my new ones. And somebody actually drilled holes in these to lighten them up. And then these are riveted style. The old style that I had on there were just a bonded style, which is basically they just glued the lining to it. These actually have rivets in them. And these are the ones I'm going to be putting back on. So I'm going to make sure my rings fit inside of those holes and spin freely. I may put a tiny bit of lithium grease on that just to keep those to where they'll spin. But we're going to just put this back together in the process that we took it apart, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got a little bit of grease on there, and you want to put very, very minimal grease on there, because you want it to lubricate it, but you don't want any grease getting up on your shoe. So I've got that to where it spins nice in there. So I'm going to slide the bottom of these back in, and then you basically can just shove the shoes back up in place on that, and go ahead and put the bolt pins in at the bottom. Oops. And of course I knocked the clip off. That one stays real nice, doesn't it? Stay there. I'm gonna get there we go. All right. I'll get my nut on the back. That basically is just a lock washer and a nut on the back side of that bolt at the bottom. So I'm gonna get those back in place and just hand tighten those until I get my spring on, because this spring needs to go back in behind that slot. There we go. And then I'll get it to clamp onto the front side here. Okay, so I'm going to try to pull this spring across and hook it back in there, just like that. And those brakes are pretty much back together then. So at this point, what I need to do is I'm going to have to run the adjusters on the back side all the way in so those shoes go as far in as they can. Same thing at the bottom. I'll run those adjusters all the way in, and then we'll actually start the procedure to set these brakes up against that drum so they're even, so the top doesn't push out, the bottom doesn't push out, so they wear evenly. And there is a procedure for doing that. I don't remember all the steps, so I'm going to get on my phone, look that back up. I've got it in a document on there, and we'll go through that and show you guys how we do that process. So now we got it back together, and I'm going to show you guys how to actually set the brakes on this. So what I'm going to do here, you can do it without this step, but it really helps if you do it. I just found some thick spacers here, like a washer, and I'm going to put those over top of the stud there. I'm going to put the stud on, or the nut on backwards, and basically I'm just going to run those down on two studs here. These don't need to be super tight. Basically, all we are trying to do with this step is keep the drum seated back against the hub there. So I'm just going to take by hand and just gently snug those. That's just to keep the drum from moving around on there while we do our adjustments on the back side of it. So I'm going to go to the back side now, and I'm going to show you guys the procedure for doing this. Now, there are two separate procedures for it. The first one is just for adjusting these when you're putting a set of new shoes on it. And then there's an adjustment procedure for when you've taken it apart and you're putting another set back on it that was already worn. So I'm going to show you the procedure because we have new brake shoes going on here. I'm going to show you the procedure for that today. So this is the back side of the brake backing plate right here. This is my axle right here. This is the kingpin and the spindle. But down at the bottom here, and I actually marked with white paint, hopefully you can see that, the dot on the inside there. So what you want to do to align those is there is a nut on the back side of it. That's the nut right there that we put that bolt through at the bottom to hold each of the bottoms of the shoes. So we're going to keep that bolt or that nut just a little bit loose to where we can get our crescent wrench or just a standard wrench on there, and we're going to turn that until the two dots or arrows there, and I have them marked in white, until they face each other. So they're basically facing the center. And that is going to be your basic setup for a new pair of shoes to go on there. And so then all you have to do is make sure those two are aligned straight across like that, like straight like that, and then tighten down the nuts on those, and that should be set just right for that set of brake shoes to align with the drum. Now, the second step to this is once you get those set in place, you're going to take an 11/16 wrench and you're going to come up on this adjuster bolt. Now, this adjuster bolt runs the top of the shoe in and out up against this drum. And so what you want to do is you want to either pull out this direction to tighten it or push in to loosen it. And it works the opposite. Well, I guess it's the same way. You always go toward the outside of the drum to tighten it, toward the inside to loosen it. And so what you're going to do is you're going to adjust the tops of those shoes so you get just a little bit of drag on that. Now, make sure you spin the hub in the direction it's going to go when it's driving, but you want it to just barely contact that and just bump those. It doesn't take a whole lot of adjustment on those to get them to move. So you're going to take that basically until you start to get it to drag just a little bit. So I'm going to go like this. I'm going to bump it just a little bit. And right there, you can see that's already adding a lot of drag to it. So it doesn't take much once you get those adjusted close to start putting some drag on those brakes. Now, as those shoes wear, as the linings on those shoes wear, you're going to have to keep adjusting these two bolts out to move that shoe out to contact that drum. And this is where people get into trouble because they don't understand how brake drums work and how much adjustment these things need constantly. Because as those pads wear, you're going to need to adjust it. Now, once this is adjusted correctly down here, we should not have to move those two. Once this is together, the adjustment's going to be up here. So I should be able to go through these set of brake shoes until they're worn out completely without moving those two bottom adjusters. Now, not all the early Ford juice brakes have those adjusters. Some of them just have a pin with a bolt there, and they don't actually have an adjuster on them. And I actually think that the rear of the car just has bolts through there. I don't think there's adjusters on it. So some of them do, some of them don't. If there's no adjusters there, you don't even have to worry about it. It should center that brake shoe right where you need it. So, hope that helps. We're going to finish up with this and then do the other side, same deal. And we'll put it back together and definitely take this out and test drive it because these may need a little bit more adjustment after we do our test drive. So, that'll be it for our brake job. If you guys have any more questions about this, or if you want to know the actual procedure on how to adjust these when the shoes have been worn a little bit, that's going to be another video. If you guys want that, leave a comment down below and let me know, and I will do a video on it.